I was muted. Hello.
Hello.
I realized that I'm also considered the manager of the Zoom meeting, so I can see where everybody is. Okay, people are getting into rooms here, so we'll give it just a minute. Let's see here. I'm going to be sharing my screen, so during the presentation, you won't be able to see me. But I think I'm going to get started, and I'm recording this, so people who miss it will be able to see the whole thing. Let's see here. What can you guys see me, or can you see the presentation?
I can see both.
You can see both. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna get started. I tried to time this yesterday and I got to 32 minutes. So I'm gonna try not to talk too fast. And I just so you know that if you do want my notes and any of the forms that I talk about during my presentation, that I just put your email in the chat, or at the end, I can grab your email if you want, and I can email it to you then. Okay. I'm just looking, making sure there's no notes. Okay. Okay. So hello there. Good morning, and thank you for coming. I'm glad you've come, and I hope that you will have some helpful tips on how to capture your grandparents, your parents, or your own oral history. This presentation can also help you with preparing and planning to interview a community member, or even help with a school or college project where you might be asked to write a biography or life sketch on yourself or someone else. Trying to slide to the next one here. These are my grandparents, Beth May Taylor and Jesse Phillip Beck. My grandfather passed away in 2016, and my grandmother just celebrated her 90th birthday in February this year. I am the firstborn child and only daughter to my parents, and I'm also the first grandchild. There are 5 living generations, with my grandmother at one end of the picture and my youngest granddaughter on the other end. Actually, the top one is my oldest daughter and my oldest grandchild, and the bottom picture has not been updated because I do have a younger granddaughter than Zelda that's on the end there. But this is our living 5 generations that we have. Maybe it's just the firstborn in me, and I'm the only daughter also, but it makes me feel kind of a huge responsibility to get my grandmother's story written down. This picture was taken about, I'm going to guess, 5-6 years ago. So she's aged a lot more since then, and she's not traveling as much either. She was born in the beginning years of the Great Depression, and all of my life she's told me stories about her travels and her life adventures, the sad things and the happy times. And so I'm working right now to get her story told, and the time is running out, I feel. At times, so I feel this is really big pressure. So this presentation is kind of a compilation of all the things I've learned over the years and that I'm doing with my grandmother. So we're working to capture her story through recent technology, digital technology. Hold on a second. Not sure. And many hours of recordings. So a little bit of background about me. Is that the right one? I have a bachelor's degree in family history and genealogy, and I'm also working on my certification as a professional genealogist. I currently work for Family Search, and I work with archives all the time, every day, to get copies of their digitized images that we have for them in Family Search. I also supervise a team that imports the metadata, which is the information that you have for the images, the people who are in them, the places, things like that, with the images all over the world. I work with Ancestry, NARA, Find My Past, also local government agencies, all the way down to very tiny small churches or archives in small towns. I'm the current newsletter editor for both the All Red Family Organization as well as the Taylor Family Organization. And I've completed oral history projects in the past, working to capture stories for historical purposes, which are housed in archives. I've done that, but I've also written many genealogical narratives of people who have passed on, and where I have to piece together their lives through small snips of history or firsthand accounts of their personal life. Working with living people, though, is much easier than those have passed on and who have not left a lot to comb through. Oral histories have become one of my favorite parts of family history, and I feel really connected to the people that I interview, and I hope I can share what I've learned to help you also feel that connection and the love for the people and their story, and also to capture things before it's lost forever to time. So I found this meme, and I'm not going to read it to you, but as you can see, it kind of starts off with our parents, our grandparents, etc. But it shows how many ancestors we have if we went back 12 generations. That's 4,094 people in just our direct line. And that equals to about 400 years back in history. But think of all that these people went through and the stories that we have lost. And we only have history to go to because they didn't always capture their history. So this is really important, and what I found kind of encapsulated the whole reason I'm doing this. So here is another one I found that really I felt connected to what we're talking about, and it says, "I'm bound to them, though I cannot look into their eyes or hear their voices. I honor their history. I cherish their lives. I will tell their story. I will remember them." And the part that stuck out to me was, I will tell their story. I will remember them. We can do this by starting this whole project. So we're going to start with our scope, our scale, and our theme. And let's not waste any more time with this. So let's get started. I have 9 steps for starting and completing an oral history project. So who are we going to interview? The first thing you need to do, though, is get a piece of paper, a notebook, or just start on your blank Word document on your computer. And then you're going to ask these questions. Decide who you're going to interview. Are you interested in interviewing for you're writing your own story? It keeps it easy enough then, because you'll be interviewing yourself. But if you've been asked to interview someone or interested in interviewing a family member, then your decision's been made. But we have a few more steps we have to get to before we can make any contact with them. So we have to brainstorm what we're going to do. So what the outcome of the project is, you want to brainstorm your ideas of what you want to accomplish in this project, but also think about what that person might need. Maybe they already have something started that they need finishing, or maybe you're going to start from scratch. So do you want to write a paper about them, a life sketch, or do you want to write a whole book? If this is a school project or a family newsletter or a blog post, it all starts with those basic, simple first things. Just write down 4 or 5 of them that you want to do. If you want to start a life sketch, it can eventually turn into a book at some point. If you write a blog post, you can turn it into a presentation. It just depends on how you want to present all of the information you're going to gather in the end. And then who will have access to this interview? Do you want, excuse me, now that you've brainstormed a few ideas of what you want, how do you want it to turn out? But who's going to be your audience? This could be just immediate family or future generations. Think about who's going to read this or listen to it or watch it after you're done. Just jot down a few of these people, because writing for your audience is super important. Excuse me. So what are your goals and hopes for this? You want to brainstorm what all your goals are and hopes for this project are. Do you want this to be published personally or professionally, or do you just want to make a copy for your immediate family or multiple copies for your family? The choices are up to you. These are your goals and dreams for this project, so write them all down on your paper. Sometimes putting together large projects need to be done in stages, so just remember that. If you write down a big project, that you'll need to break it down into smaller chunks at least eventually. And you will get to them. This may be days, months, years in the making. So I found this one too, and all these little memes or slides I feel really went well with this presentation. It says our ancestors' pictures hang on our walls, but their personalities and characteristics, their struggles and successes are woven into our souls. And I really feel this. I've always loved my grandmother. She's the only living grandmother I've ever had. But I really felt a connection with her, more especially these last few years. Okay, motivations. We're going to be to the deep nitty gritty of our motivations behind this oral project. So to do that, we need to think about if these are personal things or the whole family is asking you to do this or something like that. But why do you want to do this? You really should think about why you want to do this. I'm sure some people out there, hopefully most of you have heard, what is your why? Some people will ask you that. This is where you want to write it down now. What makes this person or community member that you want to interview? Why have you chosen them? What makes them special? Do they have a heroic story that you've heard, just maybe a snippet about? Did they save a child from an accident, or did they live through a historic event? I mean, we can even think about like 9/11, or like my grandmother who lived through the Great Depression. Is your grandma just getting old, or your parent getting old, and you just want to write down all the little tidbits of information or the stories that you've heard over your lifetime? All of these and more could be the reason why you want to capture the story, but you need to write down your why, because you might get asked about it. So who will actually benefit from your project? Really think hard about this, but the person that you're interviewing can benefit from this, as well as all their children or grandchildren and the generations to come. Living people do die, but if they die and don't tell their story, then their story dies with them too. And it's just us picking up the pieces to try and put together grandma's story or grandpa's story. So capturing these stories can help our children, grandchildren, and future generations get to know them, because they're not going to be around to see them all. The high moments, the sad moments in their lives, we and our future generations benefit from the projects that we're going to be doing. So if you've ever read a story or anything from an ancestor from 3 or 4 generations ago, think about it. Did they write their whole biography? Most of the time they don't. Usually you can't really find those. But they may have written a journal, but that could only be just a snapshot of just a few months or years that they wrote that journal. But you can also piece together things like newspaper articles, either from that town or state or something, or other biographies that people wrote that are in the same family that may have mentioned them in their journals, or even a town history could have something like that. But you're never going to really get the whole picture, the whole story, unless we write it for them or they write it and we help them. Be ready to answer the why do you want to interview me? My grandmother has asked me that numerous times. Why me? I have nothing to share. And that's not true. And I just told her, you've gone through so much in your life, just the history part of all the things you've lived through. I remember her telling me the story about when the President Kennedy was shot, and her reaction and where she was and what she was doing. And, so I'm like, you have a lot to tell me. So write down why you want to interview this person. Just jot down a few reasons and be ready to answer that question if they ask you that. Then you want to get it all together. You want to review all your notes that you've written down and really be able to answer all the questions and prompts, because they're going to ask you. But in the end, you're going to move forward in this project with why you want to do this, who is going to benefit from it, and why you want to interview that person. So we have this other one. I had to add the word in here, but you are the best author of your own life story. And that can be a reason why you tell your parent or your grandparent why you want to interview them, because they're the ones who can tell their story, and you're just there to help them get through it, because sometimes they just don't know what to say. So now we're going to lay the groundwork. Okay, so we're going to brainstorm various contexts that we can make. If you've whittled down who you're going to interview, if you haven't, now's the time to do so. But write down a few things that pique your curiosity about them. do a little research on them or on some of the places that they lived or traveled to, and take notes of the information that you find out, and use this information to prepare to meet with them and making your request or showing them your plan that you have for them. You want to make contact with these people or places. If you've decided to interview other people to help you, maybe your person you're interviewing was a city council member or something like that, you could actually interview other city council members that worked with them to get their perspective of some of the things that they worked with together. This is where you're going to make a plan to call and speak with these people and be prepared to answer them. Why me? Because they may ask the same question too, thinking that they don't have anything to contribute, and let them know who's going to benefit from this story. And then be able to answer what the individual is going to gain from this. They may not think that they're going to get anything from this, but you can list a few things that you can discuss with them. It can be just as simple as their family wants to know their story. But think of all the ways that the person, what the family or that person is going to gain from participating in this project. But now's the time to call then, after you get all this out of the way, and talk with your interviewee or your potential interviewee about your project. You want to sit down and schedule a visit with them, with their family members if they want to include them in this as well. And here we're just going to discuss what their plans are, what your plans are for the project. But ask them for if they have any ideas of their own, maybe something that they want to accomplish or finish, like I mentioned earlier. Maybe they already started writing a biography and they just need help. Or if they have tons and tons of boxes of photos that they want you to help go through. So ask what they also want help with as well. This I thought was funny because this really, like, we as family historians can erase people from history by just not even interviewing them. But I thought was kind of funny. Be nice to them though, because we can help or not help with that. So now we're going to prepare, and we have to prepare for our interview also with more background research. So background research is really important to do before you sit down with your interviewee or even their family. You want to just get basic information like their birthday, where they're born, places that they've lived or traveled to, children that they have, in major events that have happened in their lifetime. And you can just jot all the stuff that you do know down. And if there's holes, this is where you're going to make sure you want to answer those questions in your interview. So this information is really helpful when you're getting ready to interview your person. You want to come up with places to go and people to talk to who may have answers. Do you live by any of the places that they lived at during their lifetime? And maybe you can check out like a local museum or libraries or archives even in some of these places. And you can talk to people that may be able to help gather information about your family member or just the time period that they lived in. And this can help you in getting some questions for your interview for them. And then, of course, you want to make a list of questions you want to ask. If you can't think of questions, it's as simple as going online and just searching questions to ask a loved one about their life. I've Googled it. You can do that. And there's tons of questions and sheets, examples of questions you can ask out there. Just ask the questions that you're wondering about while you're doing your research too. Just make sure that your questions that you have are important, are in there as well. And a good one to ask is always, what do you want to be remembered for? As people age, they really do feel, they really know what they want to be remembered for. And so that's a good question to ask as well. Then you want to schedule and prepare for your interview. Call and visit your interviewee and discuss what time, what day, time, just knock it all down exactly when you're going to interview them. Make sure it's a good day or time period for them. Interviewees that are usually older people, they get tired really much faster, especially when you're interviewing and asking questions. It can be really draining on a person. So prepare them and yourself for the interview. Let them know that they're that they shouldn't have visitors coming, or if there's pets in the home, to have them be a minimal distraction or maybe left outside that day or something. But prepare also yourself Make sure you have all your notes and questions together and any tools that you're going to need. And we'll go over the tools part in a few minutes. So then, of course, you want to practice your interviewing skills. Read over all your questions numerous times because you want to be able to at least memorize most of them, or at least have an idea, the layout you want to have. Read them out loud to another person, get feedback from them of if these are good questions, and maybe how to reword them if they feel like you need to. Make sure to also pause between questions in your practice time, so that you would leave an answer, leave just a few seconds to answer, so that you aren't just asking one question right on top of the other. And do this at least a few times to judge how much time you might need for the interview. If it really seems like it's going to be long, like over 30 minutes, then maybe schedule multiple interview times, or at least breaks in between that. It also depends on what kind of your goal is for your project. And then, of course, you want to have a personalized checklist of things that you're going to need to remember to do before, during, and after the interview. And write down all these steps that you need to prepare for the interview, because you need to not forget anything. And you need to know what you need to do during the interview as well as after the interview. So now we're going to talk about equipment. If you have any of these old things, do you remember these things? There's little those are mini tape recorders, and a regular cassette recorder. If you have them and they're working, then that's great. You can still use them if you want to. But let's look at some other options instead. So talking about equipment, the most important thing I think to bring to an interview is a notepad or notebook. This is where you're going to have your list of questions, but also where you'll be able to jot down anything that they have. Like if you hear a response to something and you may have a question about it, you can jot that down as well. But we'll talk about audio and video recording. This is the best way to document oral history now, and digital is the best. If you're going to be using a video for your interview, you can do that, and you can use something as simple as your cell phone. If you're not in the same room, like we're doing now, we're using Zoom. You could use Zoom, Google Meets. There's all kinds of options online that you can use to video chat or to video and record with them. Just research them, because you may have limits on money or costs or anything, but your cell phone is, well, kind of free. You probably may have it and you've paid it off or whatever, and so you can use that. Just make sure it has the capacity time on there to allotted for your interview time. Also, if you want to take a stand, I recommend a stand like something like this, where you want to keep it steady. I found this at the Five Below or whatever, and so it's not super expensive or anything, and it keeps your phone steady, so you're not shaking or your arm gets tired or whatever during the interview. If you're going to be just doing audio recording, also there are apps on your phone. Whoops, that just fell. There are apps on your phone you can use just for audio recording only. My grandmother didn't want to be video recorded, so I just found an audio recording on an app on my phone, and I use that, and it's free. But some of the apps I found also have like cloud services where they'll email it to you in the end. And some will even do transcripts for you, which is kind of nice. But just do your homework, okay? Selecting equipment is vital to the history process, the oral history process. And if you cut costs or you cut corners, you could end up with not so good results in the end. And that's where it's important to try these things out before you actually interview them. So if you are using an old tape recorder, make sure you have plenty of tapes and batteries, and that everything is working. If you have, I don't have my microphone with me, but sometimes getting an external microphone also works really well with sound quality. I noticed that when I moved away from my grandmother, and then I couldn't be heard, but she could be heard because I left the phone closer to her, and I should have had my external microphone with me so that you could hear the actual question. So trial and error, it all helps. But when in doubt, paper and pencil is always good in case your equipment glitches out. And you don't want to have to re-interview somebody because you didn't have paper or your recording is messed up. Okay, so that was step 5. Now, my kids have said this about me, so I know that I'm sure everybody's heard this before, but don't ask grandma about the old times because you'll be there all day. And we know sometimes that these interviews can go really long, but we don't want to tire anybody out. So, but we're going to go on to the conducting the interview now. You want to master your arrival, your introduction, and your setup. So you want to verify everything a day or two before, when you're going to be there, how long you're going to set up for, or you're going to need time for, but also make sure it's a quiet place. You want to just sit and listen for a minute, and make any kind of adjustments like a tick-tocking of a clock or dog toys that are noisy, or maybe even just noisy road traffic. You want to close doors or windows so you don't hear all that stuff. And then, you want to have, here's my notes, a release form for your interviewee. Even if it's a family member, you want to make sure that they understand your purpose of the interview and how you intend to use this. Let them know this isn't a private conversation, that this is going to be shared with other people, but let them know who those people will be. But you also should note that at the beginning of your conversation in your interview, and have them sign the release form either before you leave, or if you're going to send them a transcript of it, then they can send the release form in at that point. But always start the recording off with who is there, what is happening, when, like the date, and where you're interviewing at. And of course, you want to have good conversation, good questions, and sometimes you need things to help stimulate their memories. So you want to have a good list of questions and topics too, not just questions. You also want to just speak one at a time. Don't talk over them. Allow for silence at times. That way it gives them time to think about things, because their memory is old and they need some time to think about the whole answer to the question or something. And sometimes the silence can also work for us as the questioner. And just ask one question at a time. And don't start with probing questions. You want to start off easy, light talking, and don't just abruptly drop them after an intense question or interview. You kind of want to ease back in to lighter questions at the end as well. And also be aware of sensitive topics. Sometimes the people that we interview have gone through a lot in their life, and you don't want to bring up memories that are going to be really painful for them as well. And if you do, then just be really sensitive about it and limit it to about 1 to 2 hours at a time. They get really tired. I've noticed that when I've interviewed my grandmother. And so you want to just limit it to either short bits of time or longer sessions to break it up over days even. I worked with her for like 3 days at a time. And so you can also have pictures that can also jog memories for them. If you do get them and you want to have copies of them, make sure you're very careful with the photos, and then make sure you return them right away after you get them copied. But label all your recordings, your papers, your pictures that you may borrow or whatever. Label everything right away so that you don't get them mixed up or something. And sometimes we don't know how to ask questions. And so kind of research this a little bit. Ask easy questions first, like biographical questions. Those are easy for people. And then move into personal or emotionally demanding questions. But you want to have built a rapport with them so they feel comfortable talking about some of these things. Don't drop them with big bombshells. If you're going to talk about something that was really sensitive, at least let them know days ahead of time. Hey, grandma or grandpa, I want to talk to you about this really sensitive information. So, and then just remember to always end on the lighter questions again. Laugh and joke and stuff. The most important thing is to listen. You're just there to ask the questions and maybe kind of remind them about things that you do know that you may have another question about, but you want to be listening to them and be flexible in your questions and your time with them, because they may need that extra time. It's always good to use your body language when interviewing with them. You want to nod and smile to encourage, let them know you're interested in this. And you want to also watch for topics that they may mention that they might be interested in, that maybe you could interview on a later date about. If anything, look at your guide sheet, your interview guide sheet, the questions that you'd had. But write them down, the ones that you've heard about or thought about, and you can ask them later about those. Let the interviewee respond to ask sorry. Let the interviewee responses help guide you in asking new questions. So if they brought up something, but maybe you thought about doing that question later, but they seem really excited about talking about it now's the time to ask them. But if they give you a word or something that you don't understand, ask for an explanation about that. And so you can understand, and so that your future readers will be able to understand too. Try to ask questions that aren't just simple yeses and nos. You want to ask an essay type question for them. That way that they give a long answer. Although I found with my grandma, sometimes she'll answer the question and then keep talking and start talking about something else too. So kind of redirect them gently back to the topic at hand, or say, we can talk about that in a few minutes. I want to know more about what you're talking about. So maybe kind of direct them that way a little bit. So take notes about further questions that you have set, where you have your paper and pen with you, but don't take too long writing things down because you don't want there to be awkward pauses there. And respect their privacy and confidentiality. Let them know that the things you're going to talk about may be private and that you respect that, but that you're only going to let this information, if it's super private that they're asking you, please don't say this to anybody. Just let them know that you'll keep this between the two of you. And if you're going to write transcripts, then you can edit it out. You don't want to lose their trust. Okay, I only have a few more minutes, so I got to keep going here. Okay, problems. There could be problems with the interviewee. They might be afraid of the recording equipment, or they forgot something. If anything, try to ease their anxiety. Maybe stop the recording, get them a drink, let them take a break, bathroom break, or stretch or something. Remind them what the purpose of the interview is for, and maybe that will ease them a little bit. You may be anxious or nervous about it, or very disorganized. So again, focus, take a deep breath. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Everything's going to be fine. Sound is another problem. And like I said, I've had problems with this in the past. I walked away from the recording and my questions were really faint. So that would have to be fixed either with a voiceover. If I'm gonna just present this as a voice audio recording of my grandma, then I would have to do a voiceover for those times that my voice is not heard in there. Remember, you want to definitely have biographical information too. Just the basics: them, their birth, marriage, death of their parents, things like that. You want to definitely have that paperwork because those are the most important things. After the interview, you want to make sure you fill in all your notes afterwards, organize everything, say who, what, where, when, everything in your notes, so that if there's any transcribers or other people going to be looking at this later, they want to know who was there and what it was about. And then, of course, you want to write a thank you note to them. The older generations, that's the time that they grew up in, and they love to get cards and letters that are handwritten from them. Okay, so now we're going to get on to the final project, but I had to read this here. Stories have to be told or they die. And when they die, we can't remember who we are or why we're here. So it's really important to try and capture these and put them in a final project. So you can transcribe and index your notes and your transcriptions and everything, recordings and everything, make copies of everything. Have a system to label it. I have a whole system that I have with a life history form, release forms, things like that. And I can send that to you if you want. Make sure that anything you have photo-wise, you make copies of and analyze your interview. You want to verify the facts. If grandma said something happened and you kind of question it, then do the research behind it to find out if it really did happen, because their memories are they fade over time. And analyze, also do a self-evaluation as well. And I have a form for that as well, to make sure that you have done the things that you wanted to do and have everything to get your project together. If you have to go back and interview grandma about certain things, then set up a time to do that. Make sure you give a copy of any recordings or transcripts to them if they want, and ask for any corrections, and that release form as well. And you want to get your story straight by encouraging your family and members to be part of this project, and then make sure that they feel the information in there is correct as well. You want to take this, advertise it. If you want to make this into a big thing, maybe a performance or a book or something like that, then you're going to need to advertise that you're doing this as well. And track your progress, use a simple system, keep a file, get input from other people. Like I said, if you doubt anything about some of their story or something like that. We all have these, I know I do, picture books and boxes of pictures, and we got to get these things out of these things. These things are not meant to be preserved forever, and we want our future generations to have access to this stuff. So make sure you take good notes. Here it is. Who's going to get these recordings? How are we going to get them to them? Figure all that stuff out. Get all the essentials out. If the grandma's giving you records and written records that she has, letters, notes, or cards or something like that, take pictures of them, digitize them, and give them back to her. But use whatever she gives you if you can in your final project. You want to organize and present your results, whether it's going to be a book you publish, a video to maybe the next family reunion, or maybe it's going to be archived in the hometown library or something like that. There's lots of ways to present this stuff, but know when you're done. When you feel that you're not going to be able to accomplish this big, huge book, but maybe you can whittle it down to something smaller and try not to procrastinate. Sometimes grandma and grandpa want to see these final things too. And make sure that you store the materials that you have in some kind of long-term storage that's good for preservation of the records, because nothing lasts forever. This sums up the whole presentation, and I wish I had time to read it. I will post this, I don't know, maybe on our Facebook group or something, but this talks about how the books or the things that we would make for this final presentation may just sit on the shelf, but our ancestors, our descendants are going to see these things later on, and they're going to be able to see grandma and grandpa's hopes and dreams and their life. And it's really kind of important. And I want to encourage you that if you plan on doing this, you can do this. There are going to be pitfalls but you're going to be fine. Just go step by step, one step at a time, walking tiny little steps if you need to, not running ones, and discover any problems, but work through the solutions. And in the end, you will understand all oral historians' challenges from the inside out, and you're going to look at historical documents in a totally different way than you ever have before. And just keep going. You'll be able to do it. Keep it simple, though, and enjoy the process. And the art of the adventure is learning from our mistakes. And I know that was super quick, but does anybody have any questions or anything?
Great information, Deborah.
Sorry.
Thank you. All together. Helpful.
Trying to hurry up as fast as I could, but try not to talk too fast. So
no, you did good. You did good.
Yes. Christian wrote in the notes that this will be recorded. And I do, like I said, I do have lots of forms and checklists that I use, and I plan on sharing them probably on the web page is probably the best way to get it out to everybody. And since the recording will be there as well, so it'd probably be good for that. So, has anybody written anything? Has anybody done any kind of a project?
I researched my great-grandfather for over a decade and finally wrote a book about him. He was murdered here in Maricopa County, Arizona, back in 1891, shot in the back of the head.
Oh.
And people didn't talk about it back then. They kept it quiet, like it was some shame upon the family that a family member was killed. And there were rumors going around, and I finally discovered, there's information out there, and really the court documents where I got the most information from, because of the depositions they took back in 1895 for the court trials. And I finally wrote a book about him. and print it, and all my family members have a copy. My cousins, second cousins, and everything. So
Is it a tailored ancestor?
no, it's a green ancestor, great grandfather. His his son married a tailor.
No.
Oh,
Married,
okay.
So my grandfather married Taylor, Alan Taylor's granddaughter,
Mm-hmm.
Alan Elizabeth Patrick's granddaughter.
Yep.
Now, Deborah, you're also an all red because I
Yes,
know
I
you write
am.
the newsletter.
Yep.
How are you an all red?
Through Alan Taylor and Sarah Levisa Allred.
Okay,
Yep. And my deal is Alan Taylor and one of his other
Hannah-
wives.
Hannah
Hannah,
Egbert.
that's right.
And Egbert.
We only have 15 seconds, but we're gonna be put back into the main room. Okay. But yeah, Vern, I know I've seen you on the all red stuff.
okay.
Okay. We're gonna join the main room again.